Thank you very much. So, to briefly introduce myself, I'm a 2023 IB graduate from Ressu, currently studying in my first year of university. So, why am I here? My academic and extracurricular path the past year or so has been quite special. I reached success in youth science competitions on both a national and a European level. My competition piece was actually my extended essay, which is a requirement of the IB curriculum. The extended essay is an individual research project completed during the final year of high school, where students choose a subject and investigate a topic relating to it. Generally, once the report is submitted, that is it, but I, unlike all my friends, am still talking about my project almost 2 years later. I don't have a very long history of change-making, but I seem to have made the most of this one thing that I have done. As in all good speeches, I've separated my talk into 3 parts. I'll first introduce my research topic and tell you a bit more about its relevance. The topic of my research was an investigation into a novel method of acid hydrolysis of cotton cellulose from waste textiles and the influence of a pre-treatment on the breakdown of cellulose polymers. I agree, that is a very long title, but to explain it simply, I had 2 main goals of my project. First, I wanted to find out whether or not waste textiles or an old cotton t-shirt is a suitable starting material for cellulose nanocrystal production. I'll explain what those are just a bit later. My second research question was, to what extent does the addition of a pre-treatment improve the breakdown of cellulose polymers? Essentially, how small can I get the fibers to be while only adding a simple pre-treatment to the methodology? As you might expect, with all that just by myself. Like I mentioned before, this was a project for high school called the extended essay, both loved and hated by IB students worldwide. I chose chemistry for my subject as it was my favorite part of school. And the way I started brainstorming ideas was just by paying attention to what I was reading in the news and what was happening in the world around me. At the time, Shein hauls were starting to trend on TikTok, and there was a lot of general media coverage on the textile waste crisis. This piqued my interest, so I began to research more about the current possibilities for textile recycling. What I found was that there are basically none. Only 1% of all textiles are recycled, and they are only recycled into new textiles instead of anything different. Once I decided that the possible new methods of textile recycling, or even upcycling textile waste, was what I wanted to investigate, I began to dive deeper into the chemical composition of textiles. So, cotton is 90% cellulose, and as it happens, cellulose research is quite advanced in Finland. The potential applications for cellulose are just about limitless. Then it was just a matter of reaching out to a professor of material science at Aalto University, and I messaged Professor Eero Konttori, set up a meeting, and pitched my idea. He agreed to supervise me, and together we came up with that long title you saw just before, which was my topic. Now, a bit of background information on cellulose. I believe that cellulose is the supermaterial of the future. It is the main structural component of plant cell walls, and it is the most abundant biopolymer in the world. Cellulose is composed of long, unbranched chains of glucose monomers, making it a polymer and giving it its versatile properties. My project focused on the micro and nano regions of cellulose, or the crystalline parts specifically. Cellulose nanocrystals themselves have tons of different properties, essentially boiling down to them being very small, crystalline, and able to self-assemble in solutions. The applications of cellulose nanocrystals range anywhere from biodegradable glitter to bulletproof vests and 3D printed blood vessels even. They're an incredible material with tons of future potential, and their production from waste textiles would basically be the epitome of circular economy, where waste is upcycled into something of value. My methodology can be separated into 5 different steps. First, I prepare the cotton samples by grinding down a white 100% cotton t-shirt into a fine powder. For the pre-treatment, half of this powder was mixed into a 1 molar sodium hydroxide pre-treatment, left to soak for 90 minutes before being rinsed and washed. The hydrolysis step was performed using a new method both invented and patented by my supervising professor and his team at Aalto University a couple of years prior to this. This new method is generally more effective and environmentally friendly, as it does not require the high concentrations of aqueous sulfuric acid that the traditional methods do. This method also uses a gas phase hydrolysis, meaning that there is less chemical waste produced overall. The cotton pulp that was pre-treated was placed into the pressure bottle where hydrochloric acid gas was added until the pressure inside the bottle reached 1 bar. The processing time was 18 hours, and the pulp was then washed and rinsed afterwards. Then I had lots of very ambitious ideas of using electron microscopes and other fancy things to collect my data. However, as I only had 4 days in the lab, I had to settle with something a bit simple as my ideas were a bit too ambitious. I measured the viscosity of the samples and took pictures of them using a regular light microscope, so I was still able to collect both qualitative and quantitative data. From the viscosity values, I then calculated the degree of polymerization, which essentially represents the relative length of the cellulose chains within the fibers. My results ended up being very good, surprisingly good even. These probably don't make a lot of sense to you right now, but I'll try to explain as simply as I can. From the graph, the 2 bars on the left indicate small amounts of alkaline hydrolysis, but this was not the most significant part. What I'd like to focus on are the 2 bars on the right, where the degree of polymerization changes from over 1,000 to less than 300 with the addition of the pre-treatment. This actually answers both of my research questions, as it improves the efficiency of the hydrolysis by a factor of 4, and the generally preferred maximum degree of polymerization for cellulose nanocrystal extraction is below or around 500 units. For the microscope images, I'd like to draw your attention to pictures C and D. In D, where the fibers went through the pre-treatment, they're clearly a lot more broken down and a lot shorter. I thought it was quite cool when I first saw this, as I hadn't realized that the difference would be actually big enough to be seen visually. For my second part, I'll discuss my emotional pathway from the very beginning until now, as well as what I feel I have gotten out of all of this. To be honest, before starting, I felt quite lost and unsure. What would keep me interested for 6 to 12 or even 24 months? I knew chemistry was the subject I wanted to choose, but what was the topic? I was still clueless on that part. After I had figured out the waste textiles and cellulose part, everything seemed to come more naturally. I got more confidence the more I researched. Every article I read seemed to me more interesting than the last. I was very excited to start the experimental part. However, it still took a lot of courage to contact the professor and pitch my idea. I was barely 17 and had never done anything like that before. During the experimental part, I was still very unsure the first day, despite all of my excitement. I thought, is my project really that important to be taking up time from all these important scientists here? Now, what I should have thought at that point, and what I believe now, is that even though my projects might not have been the most sophisticated or elegantly developed, it was still important and I had the right to be there. Of course, despite some challenges during the experimental part, I was very happy with how everything went. My results were excellent and statistically significant, and I was able to reach both goals I had set out for the project. Immediately after, I was very relieved. The process was very long and quite stressful. Despite everything, I was, and still am, very proud of it. The only thing I think I would change is the way I was thinking during the time. I was very harsh towards myself, and I hope I have learned from that. While most people don't get to do very much with their EE, or extended essay, I've gotten quite a bit out of it. For example, my project was one thing I talked about during my admission interview for Imperial College London, and ended up helping me get an offer to study their material science. I also entered my project into TEDxSYK, the Finnish National Youth Science Competition. I won the first prize, which was a study place at Aalto University. Through TEDxSYK, I also had the chance to enter the European Union Contest for Young Scientists, or EUSIS, which was held last September in Brussels. There, I met like-minded peers and had the chance to present my project to an international panel of judges who awarded me the Bioeconomy Prize. The Bioeconomy Prize at EUSIS was sponsored by Circular Bio-Based Europe Joint Undertaking, or CBEJU. The prize itself was a visit to Brussels, where I was last month, presenting my project to various people and attending a bioeconomy conference. This was quite an experience, as I had the chance to get to talk to other scientists, EU policymakers, and the cabinet experts of a European commissioner. It was really cool, to be honest. I learned lots of things, and I had the chance to influence people in power to hopefully think at least a little bit more about textile recycling and its future. To begin closing off my talk, I'll go through some of the things I feel I have learned from this experience. I started this project almost 3 years ago in July of 2021. Looking back, it's quite surprising to see how far quite a simple high school project has gotten me, as well as the impact it has had not only on me, but on other people as well. Of course, a person my age does not need to know exactly what they want to do as a career. However, I've always assumed that I would study either chemical engineering or material science, then go on to a research-based career. However, through this entire experience I've gone through with my project, my plans have shifted a bit. I ended up rejecting my offer from Imperial College London for material science and instead accepted the place at Aalto University to study industrial engineering and management. This degree combines technology and natural science with business and management, which is more aligned with what I have currently envisioned for my future. This change was not because I disliked lab research or didn't want to do math, but because I felt I can have more of an impact on the other side of innovation. Now, even though I'm an adult now, I'm not exactly sure what my job will be when I actually grow up. I was asked about my dream career a few weeks back when I said that I wouldn't mind working on the financial or managerial side of a company that manufactures bio-based materials, for example. But regardless, for now, I'm taking a bit of a break from lab research, but I'm keeping chemistry as a passion project, and cellulose remains very near and dear to my heart. My main takeaway from this entire journey, as cheesy as it sounds, is to believe in myself, my knowledge, and my skills. If I didn't trust myself and my project enough 2 years ago, last year, or even a month ago, I can say for a fact that I would not be here, and I would be quite a different person. A quote or idea I hope I can borrow from the EU youth ambassadors I met in Brussels last month is that as young people, we are present now. We should not only be regarded to as future potential, instead, we should be listened to and paid attention to now. However, what I'd like to add to this is that we first need to have the courage to stand up for ourselves and explore and showcase our visions for this to be possible. I'll conclude with a cliche. So, to everyone, be brave, be bold, and have faith in yourself, and especially your ideas. This way you can be the ones leading the charge on making our world a better place. Thank you.